Oh, I could imagine. Yeah. I mean, who knows if the servers are all up or if there's, the Wi-Fi's are screwing up things or.
Yep. Well, we are on, and the recording has started. Welcome everybody to this week's Matrexit discussion group call. A day late, normally on Sunday nights, and this week we are doing on a Monday evening because last night was not really apropos to doing the episode. I think a lot of people know that a lot has been going on down here in Southwest Florida, and I sit pretty much at the epicenter of where our lovely Hurricane Ian decided to make landfall. It was actually about 10 miles or so to the west of me on a very small, secluded island there. But we know how big the eye wall was, and definitely those of us around it got the full benefit of experiencing that eye wall. And definitely a fun storm. So you may hear sirens go off now and then during this recording. If so, no worries. It's just part of life down here right now, as they're trying to keep things somewhat civil, and they really have stayed pretty civil. I'm surprised that there hasn't been more mayhem than there really has. I know of a small handful of stores that have been burglarized, but aside from that, everybody's pretty decent. Uh, I heard a friend of mine say yesterday, because there was something they were in need of and they knew where to find it at. And they said, well, I can't do that. I'm not a thief. And his buddy said, dude, it's not stealing. This is a salvage operation now.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us are quite familiar with that term, salvage. Salvage and maintenance and remedy and cure, the three levels in Admiralty law. But anyway, we've got several people here with us this evening. Anybody has anything they want to bring up, any questions, statements, feel free to do so. Because otherwise, I'll tell you what, there's not a lot I could really say. I mean, as far as the storm goes, if you can look at pictures, pictures are one thing. But until you've been there and actually experienced it and felt the majesty and awe, yes, I did say majesty and awe of these storms, there's no real ability to realize what goes on and the feeling that you feel. It's the energy in the air. It's just something amazing. Um, Behind me for virtual background, I put in the Sanibel Causeway, which online it says it's temporarily closed. I would say it's not temporarily closed. It is permanently shut down until future time. Sanibel Causeway is basically set up of a couple little islands that some bridges go to, and they kind of hop those islands over to Sanibel Island. And those islands, those causeways, are what really got washed out. There was damage to the bridges at the connection points to land and to those islands, but the major amount of the problem was really with those causeways, those little islands. They got washed away. They're gone now. And last I heard, what the plan is from the Army Corps engineers is they are going to do the same thing that happened with the city of Tyre. If people remember, in scripture, there was a prediction that the city of Tyre would be overtaken by invaders, that they would ride into the city. And everybody thought that that was crazy as heck. What do you mean ride into the city? Tyre's an island. How are you going to do that? Well, what they did is they destroyed one of the towns on the coastline. And they took all the rubble and started throwing it into the water until they made themselves a road going to Tyre. And that can actually be found today. Archaeologists have found that down underneath the water. They've found where all this rubble is, where this road had been made, They even find parts of chariots, things like that. So that prophecy in the Bible did occur, and it did come true, and it can be seen. And so that's what they plan on doing, I guess, with the causeway and the bridge going over to Sanibel, is to bring in loads and loads of gravel and kind of rebuild a road going out there until they can fix it more adequately. Until then, the only way anybody's coming or going from Sanibel Island is either by boat or aircraft. I imagine at some point somebody's going to probably start up a ferry business and ferry people back and forth. But until that happens, those people are stuck. And it's just not Sanibel Island itself, but to the north of Sanibel Island, you have Captiva Island. Well, I think that was washed out too. That connection was washed out as well. So those people are also stuck. And people from Captiva can't even get to Sanibel. And as you head a little further north, there's also Pine Island. And at the southern part of that is St. James City. Yes, St. James, nice little town. And then you have Matlacha further up on Pine Island. And that's also a barrier island of its own. In fact, a couple friends of mine, night before last, found somebody with a boat and went over and rescued a couple of their friends off from Matlacha, I believe is where they went, which is the northern part of Pine Island. They went to rescue three of them. One of them, of course, refused to leave. They're staying put. He's a tough guy, whatever the case may be. But so there are rescue missions going on. And today, things kind of slowed down with seeing Chinooks flying back and forth. The Chinooks are those big double-bladed helicopters that you see, those really long helicopters. They're normally a sandy color. So they've been running back and forth, and so has Coast Guard, so has U.S. Army or National Guard, whatever it is that's using those smaller helicopters. But they've been running supplies back and forth and doing rescue missions constantly. Like I said, today it finally slowed down. Today is day 7 of these conditions. It'll be a week ago tomorrow that Hurricane Ian hit. Hurricane John the Baptist. Everybody got baptized, like it or not. John made sure everybody got baptized. But anyway, that's really all I have to say about what's going on here. Majority of people have water, but a lot of the people don't have electricity yet. There's tons and tons of food being brought in. In fact, I haven't had to touch any of my backup supplies that I always keep, which is nice. I mean, every time I turn around, somebody's handing me a plate of food. Like, wow, it's pretty incredible. And it's good to see humanity at its best in a situation like this. Unfortunately, it takes a bad situation to be able to see humanity at its best. But all this going on at the same time while there are not armed militia walking the streets or randomly pulling people over. This is one of the closest things that we have seen to anarchy so far. And it's not a lawless situation. Everybody's pretty much taking care of each other, which is a good thing. If anybody had anything to bring up, feel free to bring it up. You know, we've done these calls for like, 4 or 5 years now. And of course, last night was not apropos for having an episode, but I still want to make sure one got put out this week. So instead of doing it on the first day of the week, we are doing it on the 7th day of the week. I'm sorry. Misspoke myself there. Maybe a Freudian slip. Who knows? Anyway, how is everybody doing this evening that's here with us?
Doing good. Glad to see the community, you know, as the backbone where they don't need government. They can do it themselves.
as it should be.
So that's just proof. I mean, whether it's the Jonestown flood of 1889 in Pennsylvania or now Florida, it was always the locals that came out and you know and really got the job done.
Yeah, and
So,
that's the same thing here. I mean, it, see people just randomly stopping by houses and just dropping off boxes of food or cases of water, things like that, which is really cool. And one of the biggest needs actually has been gasoline because went for a few days before there's any pumps available. And I'll
mm,
say, as it was in Hurricane Irma, Wawa stations, those were the first ones to start giving gasoline out if you didn't mind waiting in line for an hour or two. So unless you really needed it, that did the same thing as with Irma. And give them another like 3 days after they start pumping gasoline before you go out there and have to get in line. And I think probably by tomorrow, many of those lines will be gone.
mm, yeah, and a lot of people evacuated. So I mean, that's I don't know if that's good or bad. Probably good that there's not the stress to worry about all the people that are not fed or you know I don't know.
Yeah, it's less people, it's less rescues to have to be done for sure. And the thing is, and I haven't heard anybody talk about this, and this is going to go to YouTube. I don't give a crap. On the day that Ian hit, I woke up in the morning and I went to the live radar and started watching what they were showing on the news. It was a station out of Tampa that was doing a 24/7 broadcast on it. And come about 10 o'clock in the morning, they were showing the eye of Ian as being just slightly north of Fort Myers. And I thought, wow, well, we dodged a bullet like normal. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people don't evacuate, is because an area will get hit. It's all on, the intestinal fortitude that you have to be able to deal with not having electricity or whatever. But too many people are really stuck on their little comforts. And they don't understand those comforts, the things that are normal, regular things to them in life, are called extras. Those are extras they have. That's not something granted to you in life. You aren't guaranteed these things. Uh, in fact, I'll say that mankind isn't even made for Earth. Like, I haven't brought this up. I was going to do an episode just on this. I'll touch on it now. Mankind wasn't even made on Earth. If people want to go to the only real source that you have and look at the scripture and go to Genesis, it says that the Elohim made man and placed him in the garden. He didn't make him in the garden. He made him somewhere else and placed him here. And look at all the other animals. I really shouldn't say it because we are animals, but look at animals and the other life forms that are here on Earth. Look at fish. They have scales, they have gills, they have fins. They're made to be in the water. Look at any other animal on the land, like a bear or a dog. Animals have a coat of fur on them. They're wearing a fur coat, keeps them warm. They've got nails, and they've got pads, thick pads on their feet. They don't need to wear shoes. They're equipped. Mankind is not equipped to live on planet Earth. Period. If you don't wear clothing, you're gonna get sunburned. Otherwise, you gotta stay out of the sun. If you don't wear shoes, well, I know a lot of people that don't, but if you were just to live on this earth apart from like sidewalks or pavement, things like that, and just have to crawl through the brush, your feet are not even equipped for earth here. And even as far as being able to defend yourself, I mean, we've got really thin nails on our fingers and on our toes. We don't have the claws like the beasts do. So this isn't really our ultimate landing point. This is not what we were made to be for. We were not made for Earth. The armor we have on, our skin, like I said, our nails, everything is not suitable for planet Earth. And I don't know how many people really stop and think about that. I don't hear people bring that up, but if you tried to go without shoes or clothing, you would not last very long on planet Earth. Bottom line, uh, mankind was made originally somewhere else and placed here. It's a test. The whole thing's a test, not just physically, but spiritually. And in situations like this, with hurricanes, for instance, and natural disasters, we see these tests get put to use and see how kind people will be to each other and how they really will treat each other. Now, guaranteed, I do know of areas, even here within the USA, that aren't even safe when there are officers on the road. I mean, point blank, there's places where, I mean, they'll rob the crack out of your butt, period. And not cities you would want to live in. Uh, However, I think it would be interesting to maybe be in one of those cities if they got hit with a disaster like this and see what really would happen. I know there'd be a degree of looting and things like that, but how much more would people really start pulling together instead of trying to do this one-upsmanship on each other? I don't know. I think that'd just be something curious to look at. And New Orleans was probably a good example of that for people that were there. But enough of my ramble.
Well, yeah, I mean the Twilight Zone episode where the guy was remember they built a house for him. This is the black and white Twilight now, not the color one.
The good one.
Yeah, I mean they built a house for him in this um, like a simulated environment for an Earthling. Well, he came out from his living room, and of course he's on display. And guess who are the creatures are looking at him on this other planet? They were humans. So to me, we were planted here, and they're just telling us, in their own deep way, because we really don't fit here. I mean, no matter how you look at it, and physically, mentally, I don't even think we're supposed to understand half of what we're living in. But the point is that we can survive, Brian, but I mean, it's not natural. It just isn't. It took a lot of work to get to where we got. To live the way we do. And we're still, half the world is still living pretty low with all their, the weather problems and the climate and the diseases they get. It's either too hot, it's too cold, too windy. It's just a big struggle. But yeah, I think we were planted here. Definitely think so.
Well, that's what the scripture says. And it cracks me up sometimes when people who I know that are, strong Bible believing people and things like that. I'll point out things that scripture says flat out. It says this. And they all of a sudden want to change topics, or they want to say things like, oh, you got to have faith. I'm sorry. Nothing in scripture tells you that you've got to have faith unless you're listening to the wannabe Apostle Paul. Everything in scripture says that you need to seek out the truth. Faith is actually an action. It's not really a belief system. That the scripture says, seek his face. It's always telling you the things that you have to do. Not that you just sit back and idly trust or believe, whatever you're told. And when I show these things to people, all they come back with are the talking points that they hear from their pastors in church. It's like, no, don't give me that. Point to something scripturally to back up what you're saying. Because the majority of these talking points that preachers or priests or whoever is saying in church are not biblically accurate. They don't follow scripture. These are things that were made up or things that they learned in seminary. Here's the direction you're going to follow. Do these things and tell people this. So this is what they want to hear. Just make them feel good so your church makes a bunch of money. But anyway, I don't want to get on a rant about the business end of churchianity. So
No, but I mean, the scriptures even gave you the flood and gave you all this talk about water coming in, and so I mean, they're telling you, but again, in their own deep way.
all right, and it's even covered in other cultures. Other cultures, even every culture has a flood story.
Is that right?
Yeah, all the cultures have a flood story. Go to the ancient Chinese script and look at the symbol for boat. What is their symbol for boat? It's kind of interesting. It's like a ship and 8 mouths or something like that. It's like, gee, 8 mouths. Where would they get that idea from? It would be Noah and his wife and the 3 sons with their 3 wives.
Interesting.
So 8 mouths is their symbol for a ship or a boat. Yeah, there's just so much like that. People get into really learning. Yeah, when I took day after hurricane, I took a kayak. I can't talk. A kayak ride around some of the barrier island areas, just to see what was going on. And because really all you see is stuff from the street, you don't see the backside of people's places where they're on the water and things like that. That's where the real damage is at. And it was interesting. There was a guy out walking around his big house, and he saw me and he waved and he said, "Savas." And I greeted him back, and I was shocked because I haven't heard Savas in years from anybody. And Savos is I would say, mostly Western European greeting for either hello or goodbye. But it stems from Latin, and it actually means servant. So when they greet people, they're actually kind of saying, "I am your servant," or "How may I serve you?" Or that is what their greeting is. Whereas I think of our greetings of hello and goodbye, and what do they mean? They're meaningless. They don't have anything behind them. But so I think it's fascinating to learn different languages and see how they're structured and see definitions behind a lot of those words, because I think we've missed out on so much with the English language.
Yeah, it's good for the commercial world, but not the best for culture.
Right.
It's very efficient, but it doesn't mean that it's descriptive, or doesn't even have much beauty in it. I mean, you could pronounce words more creatively in the future. We can start pronouncing I for eyes instead of saying fish. We can say fish. I mean, we can start doing it, but I don't know if that's going to help.
Yeah. And I don't know. And it really comes down to the education system, and the education system isn't getting any better as far as expanding people's minds, especially when it comes to language. I mean, it's even degrading and leaving the cursive style of writing, going to just the print. I think they just want people typing everything is really what it comes down to. But that greatly reduces people's ability to communicate. I had somebody the other day, this is funny, I had somebody the other day bragging to me that they were graded as being in the upper 98 percentile as far as their language skills or their writing and reading skills went. And I asked him, I said, 98 percentile of what? So he came back to explain to me what percentile means. Well, I know what percentile means. I want to know what group they found him to be in the top 98% of. That's what I'm curious about. Give me the baseline here. Give me the starting point. Well, what this is in comparison to. And conversation pretty much ended there. But the thing is that I have read lots and lots of stuff that this guy has written. And a good share of the time, I have no clue what point he's trying to bring across. Because the vowels are incorrect, the tense is incorrect, everything. Punctuation is incorrect. It's like, oh my gosh. And you were in the 98 percentile. Okay. I am highly impressed. Anyway, I think we are slowly setting our goals lower and lower and lower. We're definitely not aiming higher, unfortunately. But I invited a couple of people, others, to come on this evening who always seem to have questions and things, and thought this would be a good time to cover them. And I don't think any of them bounced on. Let me take a quick look at the board, see if any of them are here. Nope, couldn't see them. But like I said, that's why we have these calls every week, normally Sunday night. Sorry about it this week, but normally every Sunday night, because it's much easier for people to come with their questions if they're asking about the all caps name or the DBA or doing the DBA or trust or private membership associations or setting up bank accounts, all of those different things. You know what I mean? Because if you just text me your question on it, it's really difficult to cover in just a text because there's many aspects to these things that you have to realize. It's simple, but you have to be able to wrap your mind around it. And in order to do that, it takes more than just a couple sentences. And it's much easier to do it in a setting like this. That way it can help everybody now and in the future that comes back to these. This has been the whole purpose for this. Unfortunately, people don't seem to want to use it a whole lot for that, but oh well. Anyway, I might wrap this up, call it a night. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I guess no one had any pertinent questions, and you've got your issues down there. So thanks for doing this.
Yep. And nobody popped anything in the chat. So anyway, until this next coming Sunday evening, the first day of the week, not the 7th, not the Sabbath, I hope everybody has a much better week than I'm going to probably have, or a lot of the people down here in Southwest Florida are going to have. This is just part of the price that you pay to live in a beautiful area like this where the weather is generally good year after year. Unfortunately, every few years you get one of these things to deal with. But like I said earlier, unless you've been here, and I mean, I don't use the word majesty lightly. When you feel the majesty of the storm, you feel the energy, the power, the authority of one of these storms, you'll never really get it. We mentioned Genesis a little bit ago. When you see in Genesis, it talks about the Spirit moving upon the face of the waters. I get it now. I comprehend that now. I've comprehended that since the first storms I went through, especially when Irma hit. It was a Cat 4. It was a Category 4 that hit here. This was almost a Category 5. Ian was. But, it's just impossible to explain just the power and majesty and authority of this energy that controls this realm. And I think people would do a lot better in life if they were, even in the smallest amount, able to tap in to a little bit of that power, a little bit of that majesty, a little bit of that authority. Because I think this is nothing more than a proving ground for where we're really supposed to end up going. I mean, what authority you have here and can take here is going to transfer to where you go to in the future. Everybody, Christians talk about going to heaven and this and that. Well, I'm sorry. If you're not able to command any power or authority here on the testing grounds here, what authority are you going to have in the spiritual realm there or in the heavenly realm there? You need to learn how to gain that spiritual authority here. You're here for a reason. People need to realize that. And it's not to watch football or play video games or enjoy laying in the sun. All of these things can have their times and places and can be enjoyable, but that is not the purpose. It's not fulfilling the purpose. And that's what I think people need to pay attention to. We need to look at, are we fulfilling the purpose? Have a good night, guys. Catch you all Sunday night.
Thanks, Brian.
Get you, brother. Thanks for being here.